Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Leap. As usual, I am so excited about the guest that I have on this week. I am bringing Nkese Lewis on the show today, and she will be talking about her brother Rance, who passed a year ago. Is that right?
Yes, almost. So May 3rd will be a year. So yeah.
May 3rd. So, welcome to the show, Nkese. It is so good to have
Hello.
you here.
I'm glad to be here.
Well, before we jump in, I asked Nkese how she would like to be introduced. And so you can see behind her, she has beautiful fabrics and yarn. She is an artist and a retired probation officer. So I wanted to make sure that I pointed out your artistry work because she is not selling it. She does it for her own pleasure and makes gifts and aspires to write a book one day, which I cannot wait to read. Is there
Yes.
anything else you'd like to say to listeners before we jump into your grief and loss story?
No, I was excited to do this because I think that what I've learned in the last year is that people are so uncomfortable with talking about grief, but it's the only thing in life that is for certain. So it doesn't make sense that we don't talk about it more. So,
Yeah. So why don't we just start there? Why don't you talk
okay.
to us about your brother?
Okay.
Tell us the story of what happened. And then because I really appreciate what you're saying around people are uncomfortable when somebody dies because they do not know how to, what am I trying to say?
They don't know what to say. Like they don't know how to express what it is that they're feeling. And so a lot of times people just say the wildest things. You know what I mean? Like they think that there are things that'll comfort you, and you're like, thank you, but like I don't want to hear that
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah. And
You
it's
know?
really painful to be in somebody else's pain because what we want to do as human beings is we want to take away that pain and we
Yeah.
don't know how
You want to
to.
fix it. Yeah.
We want to fix it. And
Yeah.
there are some things, as we know, that cannot be fixed,
Right.
that we
Right.
simply have to live through and carry with us. So, with
Right.
that being said, tell us about your brother, Rance.
Okay, so Rance was the youngest of the three of us, and we grew up in a single parent home. So it's kind of like, my older brother and I always had to look after him. You know what I mean? And he was also a very sick kid. And so that was something that we always had to deal with. He had asthma and allergies like really bad, but to the point where he would spend like weeks and weeks in the hospital at a time.
Wow.
So we were just, I don't know how else to explain it, but he was a sick kid in the family. And so I think that sometimes when you have a sick kid in the family, like they get to do the stuff that the rest of y'all don't get to do because, it's just like your parents are happy that they're still here. They're happy that, they're doing things and stuff like that. So, but he was always just fun and he was a jokester, and he just loved people, as he got older, he really enjoyed cooking. So I
Mm.
think that he really wanted to be a chef. And so that was something that he was working towards, was to open up his own like restaurant. And he just liked cooking for people. And so when we went to the service, his girlfriend's family made a video for the service. And one of his friends from where he lived was like, when she had her first baby, he told her her husband was deployed at the time. And he told her that he was going to make her, a meal so she didn't have to worry about cooking. And she said he came with like meals, plural. So she didn't have to worry about cooking for a while with the new baby. And she was like, she just always remembered like how it was weird that a man, you know what I mean, would think like, hey, I need to take care of you. But I think it was because, my mom had us by herself. And so just seeing that, it's like he was a giver, but
Yeah, so sensitive. That is such a
yeah,
sensitive, loving thing to
very,
do.
very sensitive. But, you know, so I have a Instagram page and I just have been talking about little different things. I like to write a lot of stuff. And, I was just talking a couple weeks ago about how your connections with your siblings are just different. And I was like, even if it's complicated. And so I think that a lot of times you can still have a complicated relationship with a sibling or anyone and still grieve them in the same way you would have if it was someone close, because like you have a bond with that person. And so as Rance got older, he just didn't spend a lot of time with the family. And people were kind of like, well, does that bother you? And I was like, no, because as we become adults, we get to decide what we want to do. You know what I mean? If we want to come to family stuff or not, or, visit or call or whatever, it's like now we have the choice to do it. And if we don't do it, then that's something that you miss out on. You know what I mean? And so I always took it as, he was missing out. I didn't take it personally. I'm like, he's missing out. I'm still going. You know what I mean? And I think, probably my mom said that he apologized. And I think that he just wished that he had spent more time, doing stuff with the family. But I mean, you can't get time back, just.
You can't get time back. Before you continue, something you said is so poignant. And my listeners know that I lost my brother and wrote a whole book and interviewed a bunch of people who lost their sibling. And the theme that ran through all of these interviews was it does not matter if you're super close or estranged from your sibling, because there is no other relationship like a sibling bond,
Exactly.
right? I mean, there's no one
Right.
who can know us as well because we grew up with them. If we,
Exactly.
if we all grew up in the same household. And, I say this beautiful quote all the time that I heard a few years back after my brother died, and I can never remember the author, but it's when a sibling dies that our parents lose the past. If the sibling was married, that their spouse and children lose the future, and that the surviving siblings lose both. Just that unbreakable bond through our time and our blood and all of that. I know that you were 43 when your brother died and he was 40.
Mhm.
And even though he didn't come to all of the family functions, how would you describe your relationship with your brother at the time of his death?
I think that we were always like the closest. He was like my baby, like from the time he was born. So we were like close. And even though we didn't talk all the time, like we just had this understanding. And I don't know exactly how to describe it, but like I was the only person who could calm him down when he was like really upset. And if he wanted to talk about something and not have someone like argue with him, but just like listen and be like, okay, I hear what you're saying, but you also need to see it from this point of view. I was that person to him. And so I think he just always looked up to me. He was proud of me. He was always like, hey, can you make me something, so I can show it off. And it's hard to explain, but like we always just had that unspoken like connection.
Now, did your brother have a family?
No. So he was not married, but he has a significant other. So she actually is coming to visit us next week, which we're super excited about. And so I think for her, she was afraid because she didn't really know us. So that was the thing. I'll just tell you that really quick. That was the thing that was weird, is because when we went there, his last days or whatever, this was only our second time meeting her. And like, I extended my trip because I thought he was going to be okay and then come back to the house. So I was going to be there to help out. And so, but then he passed away on a Monday and I was there until Saturday. And so I had to go stay at their house. And I was like, this is going to be so awkward because I don't know her. You know what I mean? And so I was like so afraid and like, this is going to compound everything. But we actually bonded so much that first week. We got matching tattoos. So I don't know if you can see that.
Let me
But
see. What is it? What is the tattoo? Explain it for people
I
who
can't
are
tell you.
only on
It's just
audio.
his signature.
Oh, it's
Can you
his
see that?
signature. Yeah, I can see it. Yep.
So we went together, and I don't have any tattoos. This was my first tattoo. And so we went together and got that. And she was just like, I'm just afraid of, you know, if I lose him and then I lose his family, then I have no one. You know what I mean? She was like, I don't
Mhm.
have, and she was like, even though I don't really know y'all, she said, when I hear you guys talk or how you say certain things, like I can hear him through you. And so she wanted to still have that connection. So we went back in September. My mom and I went back in September and visited her. And now she's coming out to visit us in at the end of the month. So I'm really excited about that. And I think that a lot of times that doesn't always happen. You know what I mean? Sometimes there's a lot of like animosity and drama that happens. And I'm just glad that we didn't have that.
I think that that is remarkable. I mean, I think that that speaks volumes to your family and to you that you were so open to cultivating a relationship with this woman who obviously your brother loved and she loved
Right.
him, and that you didn't know her. I mean, what a
Yeah.
cool story. What happened with your brother?
I think that he probably had like an underlying condition, but at the time he didn't have health insurance. And so he hadn't been to the doctor for quite some time. And he had pancreatitis, and he went in on, I want to say it was like a Thursday evening, and they tried to do a surgery to alleviate something or whatever, and they thought that it worked, and everything was fine. And then by Sunday evening, they were just like, there's nothing else we could do.
God.
So it was just like out of nowhere. So here's the thing is, because we don't know like if he had something else going on, because he was kind of a private person, so he didn't really talk about that stuff, and I know he didn't want to worry my mom. And at the time, my mom had just recovered from sepsis. And so I know that, he didn't want to put that burden on her. So I don't really know, but she thinks that he probably was diabetic and that just added to that. But I don't know.
I mean, I told you it's the weirdest thing. I mean, you and I have so many, well, Nkese and I got a chance to talk before we started recording, and that very similar with my own brother too. I mean, he was sick on a Wednesday and he died on a Friday. Like it was just like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And same, completely out of the blue. And, I often get asked in my work and, through clients that I work with, you know, do I think that there is a difference in the way we grieve depending on how someone dies? And what I mean by that is
If it's
there
long. Oh, over.
exactly,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
if it's a long illness and everybody gets to say goodbye and do their thing, or if it's super tragic. I mean, I have talked to people who have lost people in from murder to
Yeah.
suicide to everything in between. It is all tragic. Do I think some of those more violent ways, because then people really have to grapple with really deep anger, that I
Right.
think makes it a more complex grieving process. But I do think when a younger person dies out of the blue and you don't have this, at least for me, the way I feel is that there were so many things that I wish that I was able to say to my brother.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you and I had the opportunity to talk about is our belief about the afterlife, which, even though, like, I believe my brother's with me all the time, I feel like I
Yeah.
get signs all the time, I feel like I talk to him all the time. That, of course, helped in the grieving, but it certainly did not take away that deep loss I felt for not having my brother here with me, where I could hug him and hold him and
Right.
talk to him and all of
Right.
those things. But what I will say is it does bring me comfort. And
Yeah.
so I would love for you to share, because you got to share some of the signs that you have had from your own brother. And I
Yeah.
would love for you to just, I know one story you haven't shared with me yet, and I can't wait to hear that. But before we jump into the surprise story, can you talk a little bit about the visitations that you've had in your dreams and how that has provided comfort in your own grief journey with your brother?
Okay. I am a very spiritual person. And so, I would just be like, pray to God and be like, I just need to see my brother tonight when I go to sleep or whatever. And so in I've seen him in dreams, and he's been various ages. Sometimes he's talking, and then other times like he's not talking. He's just there. And it's weird because it's not like he's like glowing. He's not like glowing or anything, but he's like perfect. And I hate to use that word, but it's just like he has no blemishes. Like he's got this, new life and new body. And I remember this one time I was just like in a really bad way, just mentally, emotionally. I just felt like I was just like drowning in my grief. And, I remember in that dream when I dreamt about him, he was like, I need you to be okay so I can be okay, like, and I don't know like how else to explain it, but I knew what he meant. Like, I'm okay where I'm at, but I need you to be okay where you're at. And I think it's just the realization that they're not coming back. You know what I mean? It's like sometimes you just feel like you're in this nightmare and you're like, did this really happen? Like, so for me, like it's almost a year and I'm still sometimes thinking like this did not happen. Like this didn't happen for real. You know what I mean? And so sometimes like those dreams really just help me and, make me realize that, he's on the other side. Like literally, sometimes I feel like he's like right here. So there's just like a piece
Veil.
of glass, separating us. Like he's right here, but he's just on the other side.
Yeah, we
So
call it that thin veil, right? Between the
yeah,
physical plane and the spiritual plane.
yeah.
So I'm curious though, Nkese. So what happened for you with that dream where you had this deep sense that your brother came and he gave you this message? I am okay. I am here on the other side. I'm okay. Look at me. I'm beautiful,
Yeah.
right? Because I do believe that our spirit is perfect, right? It's
Yeah.
it's us that are
Yeah.
imperfect. And
Right.
so did that bring you a sense of comfort? Did you feel differently in the morning when you woke up?
Yeah. And I think it's more of like hey, you're there and you still have to function where you're at. You know what I mean? Because like I said, I'm a wife and a mother. And so, yes, we all need to grieve, but life goes on and we still have to be able to get up and go and function and do the stuff that we need to do. And I'm not saying that we don't need to take time to grieve, but it's like, we still have so much living to do. And I think that's the thing that like life is a gift, right? And you have this gift, and like I'm an age that my brother will never be. You know what I mean? And so that in and of itself is a blessing. And so if I don't do anything with that blessing, then it's like, what do I have it for? You know what I mean? So
Wait, stop. That's so beautifully put. Hold on. Okay. So, because lots of people, when they're grieving, do not look at life as a gift. They look at it as very, at least I did. Let me speak for myself and so many other people that I've talked to. It's daunting. We do not understand how to go on. It is so dark. We get terrified. We're never going to feel joy again.
yeah,
So, can you talk to us? Because obviously you're open to joy again. I can
yeah.
feel it. What happened though? Okay, so you had this visitation from your brother. How long after his passing did he come visit you for the first time in your dream?
I don't know. Let me tell you the story first, and then I can tell you. Let me think though. Let me think back because I could hear him in my dream the day he died. I could hear him like talking in my sleep. And I don't remember like what he said, But I remember hearing him, like hearing his voice when I was asleep. I didn't see him, but that same day that he died, that night when I was trying to sleep, and, I was up off and on, crying. And when I closed my eyes, I could like hear him, but I didn't see him yet. So he lived in Colorado at the time. So I came back home, and it was kind of a blur, for a couple of weeks. It was kind of a blur. And I was just like, I just need a sign. I'm crying every day. I can barely get out of the bed. Like and I think this sounds bad. I don't mean for it to be, but it's like when he passed away, it was almost the end of my kids' school term. And so I was able to grieve without having any responsibilities. Like I didn't have to take anybody to school. I didn't have to be at school activities. And so that gave me time to really just sit in it. You see what I'm saying? And so I was really able to just sit in it and let it take me over. And so I was like, I just need a sign. Like I haven't seen him. Like I don't, I just want something. And I'm crying and everything. And so I'm up like, it was like 3 o'clock in the morning this one night. I'm up, and my husband was working late that night. So he came home and he's like, there's a butterfly in the bathroom. I was like, what? And he was like, there is a butterfly in the bathroom. And
Oh
I was
my
like,
God.
I've been up. You know what I mean? And so I'm like, I didn't see a butterfly fly into my room. I don't know how it got into the house because, we have a 2-story. I was like, so how is it in my bathroom? Okay. And I was like, it's probably just a moth, thinking. So he's like, no, it's a butterfly, I'm sure. So I got up out of my bed, 3 o'clock in the morning. And sure enough, there was this like, it was like brownish and it had some other colors on it, but it's a Florida, butterfly. And sure enough, it was like on the wall. Okay. So I'm like freaking out because I'm like, there's a butterfly in the bathroom. I was like, Rance, like, I'm like, is that you? And then I hadn't unpacked any of the stuff that I had taken to his house. And so earlier that day, his girlfriend gave me some of his shirts. And so I had unpacked the shirts and hung them up because I was going to hang them in the closet. So they were on the door to my closet. And the butterfly flew from the wall to the shirt. And then it just sat on the shirt. And then I was just like, oh my goodness. So now I'm like crying, you know what I mean? I'm like crying. And then I opened up I opened up one of the windows in the bathroom that doesn't have a screen. Don't ask me why. And, let the butterfly out. But it was like the most random thing because it was a random time. And I was just like, I knew that was a sign from him.
No question, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like there are signs that I've had where I'll tell my friends, and I'm like, even those friends that may be like, that don't necessarily believe in that sort of thing. I mean, there
Right.
are some signs that are so obvious that you can't possibly,
Right.
excuse it away, like,
Yep.
or call it a coincidence because it's too intentional. It's
Right.
too in
Right.
your face when you're
Yep.
like, okay, I've got this butterfly. I've never had a butterfly in my house ever. Right? Like
I
a
know.
butterfly has never flown into my home before. So that is such a cool story.
Yeah.
So what I want to know is,
Okay.
you know, what have you done this year? When you said that I think allowing yourself to sink into grief, that's what I call the grief work, right? Where we really
Yeah.
let it wash over us because
Right.
it's heart work. Grief work is
Yeah.
heart work.
Yeah. You have to. You
You
have to.
can't be in your head. Like you've got to move that deep, profound sadness and then go through all of the things, right? Like
Yeah.
the conversations that you've had, regrets that you have, whatever it is, everybody's process is different, or we delay it. We delay
Yeah.
the inevitable. So, what have you done over this past year where you feel like you have honored this grief journey that you have been on? What have you done?
Okay. So I think the biggest thing is like I went on Instagram and like followed a whole bunch of grief pages because I just feel like, so like I told you, I've always been pretty good at writing. And so that was a point in time where I could not write at all. Like I had no words. I wasn't able to put my thoughts down. And so following those grief pages, like I read words of things that I was feeling, but I couldn't like put a voice or words to them. And so that really helped me. I got two grief pen pals. And so we were just writing back and forth about, our grief and who we lost. And so the latest pen pal I have, her brother and my brother were the same age when they passed away. And like we have so many similarities. And so that to me also felt like kind of like a gift from God for me to find someone who was sharing the same grief, because that's the thing is you can talk about grief with anyone, but like it's different when you're talking sibling to sibling. You know what I mean? Like y'all understand it in a way that's different. And because society puts such a precedent on all the other relationships, but not sibling relationships. And so I did that. And then one of my really good friends asked me to design something. And so if you can see it, yeah, it's this one right here. So this is a shawl that I made in honor of my brother, and it's called the Legacy of Love shawl. And I came up with that name after we had his service. So he passed away in May, and we didn't have his service until July because we had it back in our hometown. So just to give everyone time to plan and get there and everything. And I called it Legacy of Love because I got to see what a legacy that his love for other people left. And it was just like mind blowing to see all the lives he had touched. And I mean, there were so many stories that we didn't even know that we got to hear about. And the high school that we graduated from retired his football number and then have an award in his honor now for the football team. And I thought that was like a really big deal because that was something that they had never done before. And so anyways, back to the shawl. So I designed this, and my friend dyed one of the colors, and it's called Rance. So
That is so beautiful. I'm sorry. The color is called Rance.
yes.
That is
And
amazing.
yes. And so it was like all his favorite colors combined. But the thing was, she didn't know what his favorite colors was. She just came up with a color. And then when I told her that, she decided to call it that. So I designed that. And then once I finally found my words again, I just started writing about it and doing posts on Instagram and just being honest about my grief. And I think that opened up the door for me to have conversations with other people. And so, and obviously, just your work and what you do is like when you have those conversations and you can talk about it openly and you don't feel like you're being judged or like it's somebody like, oh, I'm tired of hearing about this. You know what I mean? It's like when you can just speak about it and be like, this is how I'm feeling right now, or today's not a good day, or, just whatever. And then I have some really good friends who just hold space for me. And so if I'm like, hey, I'm having a bad day, I need to talk about what's going on today, like they just make themselves available, for me to do that. And I think that's really important.
It's huge. And so let's talk about a couple of things that you
Okay.
mentioned that I really love. How did you find pen pals? Was there a site that like
Yes.
connects people? What's that called? And listeners, we'll have this in the show notes. I am not aware of this though. I've never heard of this. So what's the pen pal site?
And now that you asked me, I think it's inviting abundance. I think that's what it's called. I'm gonna have to double check for you. But periodically they open it up and you can sign up for it and you can get somebody from like anywhere around the world. And it's like they don't do like a same grief pairing necessarily. It's just they just pair you up with someone. But it's good because you have to do it for 6 months. And then they give you a writing prompt every month of, what to write about that involves grief. So I've enjoyed it.
That's
I've really
wonderful.
enjoyed it.
I developed a writing course. I have yet to launch it, but I developed it a couple of years ago and just haven't put it out there yet. But it is writing our way through grief and loss.
Yeah,
And
you need to do that. What are you
I
waiting on?
exactly. In fact, I'm going to launch it this summer. But it's just funny because you are the third interview I've had to sort of reinforce this idea, because I wrote my dissertation on writing through grief, loss, and trauma. And of course, then when my brother died, I did it with my book, right? Like it
Yeah,
took me 3.5 years. Every day I cried. But it's amazing when you start writing, whether you take a course or just start journaling or write to somebody, because the art of writing, it gets it out of your head, it gets
exactly.
it out of your heart, and you
Yeah,
can just put it on paper. And,
right,
even clients that I work with, always having them write. And you don't have to be a writer. You don't have to think you're
right.
good at it. It doesn't even matter. It's totally doesn't matter. It is putting it on paper. But what I really love, I love this idea though of a pen pal, because it feels like it adds a depth of intimacy where you're not writing to nobody either, like
Right.
you're having this exchange, which is very cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I said to listeners, Nkese, you can go ahead and check that. I'll check that as well, but we'll have that
Okay.
in the show notes. And then honoring, right? Different ways that we can honor people that we have lost. And you're an artist, so this legacy of love that you created for your
Yeah.
brother. There are so many different ways that we can honor the person that has died. And oftentimes people will say, well, like, what can I do?
Yeah.
And I said, you can do anything you want. You can cook
Mhm.
their favorite meal. You can plant their favorite tree. You can go on a trip they never were able to take, like read a book that they didn't
Right.
get to finish. Like it's endless. The idea is just that you've got the spirit of the person that you love, and that whatever you're doing that with that person in your heart and that memory. There is no
Right.
special thing, right? It's
Yeah.
just we are living our life and we are moving forward with them in our heart. They're with us
Exactly.
all the time.
I'm actually doing a shawl along. So people are going to make the shawl with me. And we're doing that the whole month of May. So the purpose is for everyone to honor someone that, that has passed away and pick their favorite colors and use it in there. And I'm not going to tell you the story because I would have to take it down and the ladder is not over here. But if you guys go to my Instagram page, I've explained like the story of how the shawl came about. And it's a very important story. So you have to listen to it to see how I came up with this. But anyways,
That's the perfect segue because we're at the top of the hour, but we're going to go on because we started a little late. So we still have some
okay.
time. What's your Instagram page?
Okay. It's cosmic creations dot in dot designs.
Cosmic
Yeah.
creations dot n, as in the letter n,
Yes.
dot
Designs.
designs. Okay.
Yeah.
And we'll have that in the now I can't wait to go read the story.
It's in my highlights. It says Legacy of Love story. So it's in my highlights.
And it's called the shawl along. I just
Yes.
love this. Is so beautiful. Keep going.
So we're gonna have a shawl along. And the reason I wanted to do it is because I wanted to take the time for people to open up and talk about grief. And like I said, I think it's something that we don't do enough. And I think that the reason that people are afraid of dying, because my kids and I talk about this kind of stuff all the time. I think the reason that people are afraid to talk about it is because they're afraid of how they're going to die. You know what I mean? So I don't think it's necessarily the dying, it's just how, you know? And so, but like I said before, it's the only thing that is inevitable for all of us. You know what I mean? So why aren't we more comfortable talking about something that's gonna happen, you know? But I want people to share their grief, share stories. That's really what I'm looking for, is just people to share stories about people that they loved and like, why did you pick these colors? And like, what did this person, mean to you? How are they influential in your life? Just stuff like that. And it's really just to spark conversations. So we got the whole month of May to do that. And so we'll see how it goes. But a lot of people were really excited to do it. And, you know, people got the pattern in, I think, January, but I was like, I'm going to do a shawl along in May if you want to wait. And so people are waiting. So yeah.
Just so that I understand and our listeners
Mhm.
understand, are people making their own shawls too?
Yes. So you're
Okay.
going to make your own and pick the colors that remind you of your person or persons and weave all those in there.
But what if
And
we don't know how to sew?
it, okay, well, see, that's the thing. It's not sewing, it's actually crocheting. So yeah. So, but I mean, listen, YouTube.
Well, and I think too, I'm metaphor girl, right? So everything's a metaphor. So, while people are creating their shawl-alongs, they can create anything that they want, right? I
Right.
mean, and pick the
Exactly.
colors that they want. I mean, I remember when I ran groups at the Center for Grieving Children, we would make sand art, right? So you would have, you know what I'm talking about, right? You just
Yeah,
get
yeah,
like a
yeah.
little glass vase and you pour different
All
colors
the
of
different
sand
colors.
in.
Right.
I mean, so there's, I can think of, parents could be out there making things with their children. I mean, I think that there's so many different kinds of artwork you could paint, you
Yeah.
could paint a picture if you want. The idea is to be very intentional around creating something with the spirit of the person that you've loved. That's what
Right.
it sounds like, and share. I love this. And then
Yeah.
people can post what they've created, right? And send you
Exactly.
pictures and things.
Yeah.
Oh, Nkese, I love that. I think that is so beautiful. All right. So, with our few minutes left,
Okay.
one of my favorite questions that I ask at the end, just a little caveat that your brother has not been gone that long. You haven't even hit the 1
Right.
year mark. And it
Right.
sounds to me like you've just done some remarkable work over this past year.
Yeah.
And when I say the word self love, right, because I think that takes on a different meaning for us when we've gone through a deep, deep loss.
Yeah.
What does self love look like and mean for you now?
For me, really, it's because, like I said, because I'm super busy with my kids, but it also means that I have to take time to rest. And, I rest a lot, you know what I mean? But it's because I'm resting for my physical health and my mental health. And I think just also taking time for myself, which means like if I'm creating or I'm writing or whatever, it just means like I need to have time where it's quiet, where, you know, it's just me. You know what I mean? I'm not talking about, like taking a bath. I know people do that, but I'm just talking about like having some time and space where I can just sit in the quiet and just be me. And also, I think the biggest thing for myself as I get older is just being unapologetically Nkese. And not everyone's going to like you. You know what I mean? Not everyone's going to like you, and you're not going to fit in everywhere. And that's okay. You just have to learn to like find your people and be with people that make space for you and that love you unconditionally. And so I think that when you go through a deep loss like this, like you get to see who your friends are, right? Because some friends can stomach the grief and some friends just can't, you know, and you don't have to fault them for that if they can't. You just know those aren't your people. You know what I mean? And sometimes I think the painful part is people that you expected to be there aren't. You know what I mean? And people that you didn't know would be there are the ones that show up for you. But in this, I just feel like, because I was talking to my mom about this the other day, like, I don't have time for the messy and the drama and all that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have time for that. Like, life is short, and we know that already, but you really get to see it. And so I think that in this last year, really, I've cut out a lot of maybe toxicity that I allowed to be around before because, we just go with the flow sometimes. And like, I'm done with that. You know what I mean? I'm done. Like, I want to be intentional. I want to be purposeful. And if you aren't in that same lane as me, then I got to move on, And so that's my self-love now, is just knowing what I have the capacity for and not making room or space for things that just aren't going to better who I am as a person. So,
And I have zero to add to that because that was so perfectly and beautifully put. And I think that when that loss is right here, we can't help but see our own mortality. And the question is, how do you want to live out the rest of your life?
right.
Right. Nkese, thank you so much for this beautiful conversation and for this shawl along that you're doing in May. I love the name of it. I love the idea of it. And I'm going to partake in this. I can't crochet for all of the listeners, but I will find my own way to partake in this
Okay.
beautiful, just in this beautiful honoring of the people that we love. And
Yes.
as soon as I finish this, I have to go read the story.
Yeah, I didn't write about it. It's a video. I'm talking because
Yep.
I'm holding up the shawl, this one on the end. I'm holding it up and I'm explaining each section. So make sure you listen to it.
I will. I'm going to go right now. All right. I want to thank you so, so much for being here. I want to thank all of our listeners for tuning in. And I hope this conversation helped you a little bit along your own grief journey. And we'll see you guys here all next week. Bye for now.